Hey everybody, Cameron here. I just wanted to make a quick statement on something that I saw on Twitter actually. I think it was Larry Elders. It's I guess some kind of a TV personality or something. Anyways, he made this statement. He had a question. He said, what can the government do about inequality without making it worse? And he said, nothing. He said, you have to just play the hand that you're dealt to the best of your ability. I mean, that is a fucking idiotic statement. That is the height of just programmed ignorance, complete programmed ignorance, to say that there's nothing that can be done about inequality and that you have to simply play the hand that you've been dealt to the best of your ability. That is so fucking stupid, and you have to be programmed beyond stupidity to think that that makes any sense whatsoever, or you have no ability to think whatsoever critically about the situation. You're simply just protecting your own self-interest, subconsciously, unconsciously, probably without even completely realizing it at all. Because the thing is, something can be done about it. Just because there haven't been any effective solutions to inequality thus far in the world, doesn't mean that it can't be solved. It just means that it hasn't been approached in the right way. And I think it was Albert Einstein. Everybody knows this quote from Albert Einstein that you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that you used to create it. Well, that's the problem, is that we've been trying to solve the problems of inequality using the same consciousness that created it. In fact, the problem itself is consciousness. It's the thought process. Because your thought process is based on your resonance. It's based on your programming. The resonance is your physical circuitry in your body from which you vibrate, from which you emit frequencies. So if you don't change the resonance, then the consciousness that's projected from it won't change. So can we change the situation of inequality in this world with consciousness? No, because consciousness is a fucking trap. Consciousness is the after effect. So to say that you have to use consciousness to solve the problem is not realizing where the problem actually lies. The problem lies in the programming itself. So the hand that you're dealt in this world is your programming, because the hand that you're dealt is the environment you're born into, the parents you're born to, and then the education that you're exposed to in the beginning of your life. That's the hand that you're dealt. And you can't play the hand any differently than the hand itself, because how do you utilize what you're given to the best of your ability? Well, it's based on your vocabulary. It's based on your education. Your ability to play your hand is based on your education. Just think about the analogy itself. If you're playing cards and they say, well, you just got to play the hand the best that you can. Well, if you're an expert poker player who knows how to read all the other players and all the hands that are possible and what everyone else could possibly have, and you can read their hands based on how they're betting and so forth and the cards that are laid out depending on the game you're playing, then you're going to play that hand a lot better than someone else who has the exact same hand who doesn't know the rules as well as you do. So the statement that you have to just play the hand you're dealt to the best of your ability is totally ignoring the fact that you can only play it to the best of your ability depending on the actual education that you're given in the beginning of your life. So if your education is not effective in the beginning of your life, it's going to limit your ability to play that hand. So someone who's saying that, oh, the government can't solve inequality, well, let's look at the context of it, because probably what they're looking at is the context of government as it currently exists, which is a bunch of corruption and a bunch of people who are just there because they were put there by corporations or by donors who want special favors based on their putting that person into a position of power. Okay, sure. That level of government is not going to work. So what's the solution? The solution is we need people in government who can actually be trusted to do what's best for everybody, which is to write laws that would actually ensure that children are guaranteed an effective education and children are guaranteed their basics that they need, which is food, shelter, water, clothing, and education. And if we could ensure those things, that every child has an effective baseline of those things, then we would solve the problem of inequality. The problem, the way they're trying to solve it right now is, well, we live in a capitalist system, which you need an effective education to be able to compete within. So there's a bunch of people born in this world that don't have an effective education. So we're just going to give them a bunch of money, but not educate them on how to actually utilize it effectively. So we're just going to give them food stamps. So they're just going to go buy a bunch of shitty food like Coca-Cola and McDonald's French fries and Doritos chips. And they're going to have poor nutrition, so their brains are not going to function effectively. So when they have children, the children's brains are not going to function effectively, and they're not going to develop effectively. So the children aren't going to be able to reason, and they're not going to have effective educations anyways, whether they have proper nutrition or not. So these... oh, that's cool, Lisa. I'm glad to hear that. So these children are not going to have effective educations, and then the problem of inequality is not going to change, because the problem of inequality is not just that people don't have jobs. The problem is they're not being educated effectively either. So the only solution is we need people who understand the problem, are committed to doing what's best for everyone, and get into a position where they can change the laws. And we need people who can support the children that exist right now and those adults that are willing to have an effective education. That's what I do with TechnoTutor, and that's the people, some of these people are listening and watching right now, are in TechnoTutor. That's what we're supporting people with. And we're supporting children now so that they can develop effective reasoning skills, so that when people like us get into positions in politics and government and so forth, and we present solutions that are best for everybody, that the children who are, they're going to be 18, 20 years old in 20 years time will actually be able to understand what we're saying. And probably a lot of them will become politicians too. So whether we put ourselves in that position or we just prepare the next generation to be those politicians, doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of how long we want to take. But the question is, do we have enough people who are willing to become rich? Because that's what it takes to become a politician in this world. As you can see, Donald Trump was able to do it because he's independently wealthy, so he didn't have to rely on special interests. I'm not saying the guy is totally perfect. I'm just saying he's able to do what he wants, and he's able to stand up, and also he has business skills and sales skills and persuasion skills. So, you know, he got out there and did rallies when Hillary Clinton wasn't, so he kicked some ass. That's what he did. So he's a rich dude who had some ideas about how he thinks government should be, and he got up and he stood up and he did what he needed to do. And if we had hundreds of people or thousands of people like that in America who had the principles of what's best for all, they could reason effectively, and they could stand up in positions of government and say, look, we're going to actually do what's best, and we'll sign agreements and say, if we don't do what's best, we'll resign. That's what we need. We need politicians that sign agreements that say, I am going to use this office in a way that's going to be best for everybody, and if I don't, then you're free to kick me out. But the problem is, most people wouldn't even vote for that because they're too stupid, because they're programmed to be ignorant because of their education. And so we need children who can reason effectively, and we need adults who can reason effectively. And the only way to do that is through TechnoTutor, because TechnoTutor is the only thing that's going to give you access to your actual learning ability, so you can get rid of all the bullshit that's been programmed into you by this society, which is designed by people in the past who have had no interest in what's best for everybody. They only had interest in securing their own legacy and their own self-interest. And honestly, if you're honest with yourself, that's all anyone really cares about. That's probably all you actually care about anyways. So unless you can actually go back and change that base programming that's been put into you as a child when you weren't even aware of what's happening, then you're pretty much screwed, and the entire world is pretty much screwed. So unless we can, like Jesus said, become like children again, and relearn what it means to be a real living human being on this planet who actually cares about what's best for everybody and isn't just chasing their own happiness day after day, which is a goal that you will never achieve because you are going to die and you cannot take any of that with you. Your experiences and memories are temporary. They stay in your body. They return to the earth just like your body does. When you die, you don't get to take any of that with you. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it's time to wake the fuck up and get real, because you're wasting your life if you're not doing what is best for all. If you're not becoming the very best version of yourself, which means in this world becoming effective so you can support the solutions that would actually change this world so that children don't go to bed hungry every night, then unless you're doing something that's actually making a difference in this world from that context, you are wasting your life. And no matter what you pursue, you will not be happy. You will always get dragged down into the pettiness of the emotional ups and downs, because energy is an up and a down. It's a mechanical wave. That's how energy works. It's just like a battery. You have to charge it up and then it runs out. And if you're basing your relationships, and if you're basing your life, and if you're basing your happiness on energy, then it will come to an end. And if who you are is just based on energy and it's just based on consciousness, then when you die, you will no longer exist, because who you are was just a projection of energy based on the body. And if the body dies, you die too. So it's time to get real. And I suggest that you investigate Bernard Pullman's message, which is just the message of Jesus. The difference is Bernard Pullman was alive in this day and age and was actually able to understand how your mind actually works and how consciousness actually works and how we're actually lying to ourselves and how we've actually designed this false reality in our minds, which then affects the real reality around us and affects animals, and it affects plants, and it affects other beings that are here on earth that we don't even think about. And it affects children because they're born into this world, and then we infect them with our limited mindsets that are based on self-interest and survival only, when in fact you can't survive. I mean, think about it. No one alive that's going to survive. You're not going to survive, so why are you worried about surviving? You're not going to survive this life. So you might as well do the very best that you can, because then maybe at the very end of your life, you'll be given another life, because you actually used this one to the full potential of what it represents, because that's what it really means to live at your optimum potential. That's what it means to actually utilize this gift of life that we have, which is very precious and limited, and none of us know when is going to be the last day that we have. So we don't want to be on that last day in regret, because that's Judgment Day. Judgment Day is the last day of your life. It's not some pretend made up time when there's some guy in a white beard who's going to call you in front of the holy court of angels and judge you for all of your crimes. No. The last judgment is you judging yourself. The last time you judge yourself. So it's time for us to get real and actually do something that matters with our lives. What I'm telling you is, if you don't know what to do, then maybe you should check out what we're doing with TechnoTutor. Or there's lots of other options. So maybe you don't want to sell something, maybe you don't want to start a business. There's other options. You could become an attorney. We need lawyers who are going to go to the UN and change the laws in government. We need politicians. We know all kinds of people. So the point is, you may not know what you want to do, but I guarantee you there's some things you need to change about your programming, because it wasn't effective. And that's why you're not already part of the elite. But thank God you're not. Because if you were, you probably would have zero compassion, and you probably wouldn't even be listening to me right now. You probably wouldn't care at all about the problems in this world, because you'd be fine. The problem is, you know there's a problem in your life. That's why you're interested in more success and you're interested in doing more with your life, because you know there's a problem. So unless you look at the entire context of the problem and realize that the problem isn't just your thinking is incorrect only, the problem is this world is designed to continue to brainwash children to have ineffective thinking patterns, so that only the few who want to remain competitive and stamp out all other competition can do that, then you're really not looking at the entire context of the problem. And you're only looking at your own self-interested happiness. So, that's the message. Can we solve the problem of inequality? Absolutely. Is it going to take a different level of thinking rather than just our limited level right now? Absolutely. Is it going to take people really waking up and realizing what reality actually is and what you really are as a human being, and the fact that we've actually limited ourselves completely as mind consciousness systems, and that's not really who we are, and we're actually physical bodies that have capabilities so far beyond what we can even imagine right now, because even our imagination is limited, because it's been programmed by a reality that just wants to turn us into consumers and slaves. And look around at the world and look around the people around you. We're all just slaves, and we're all going to die, and even the people who are at the top of the pyramid are going to die. And so it's all for nothing. And meanwhile, there's children growing up in this world where their entire experience of their whole life and their whole existence is just starvation until they die. And that's not acceptable. So I'm not going to accept it anymore. And I'm just looking for people who really want to get to their full potential. And the thing is, we can experience ourselves in such an amazing, fantastic way. Look up the word fantastic. It means not real. But the thing is, Our lives are not real. What's real is what's physically here, and we're totally ignoring that because we're doing something in our mind in this other dimension that we've created where we think that we are like superheroes and gods, when in fact we're just slaves, and we're just abusing our bodies for the benefit of some temporary energetic experience that we call happiness, which comes and goes. And you know what I'm saying is true. You know what I'm saying is true. And if you're reacting to what I'm saying, it's just because you don't know what the solution is. But I can support you with that, and other people can support you with that. All you have to do is reach out and say, let's connect, let's start networking, let's start talking about this problem. Because the more people we have talking about it, the more people we have working together, the bigger the mastermind. We have to do this as a group. We can't, the problems of inequality won't happen because the government does it. Because right now, the people who get into government are corrupt as hell. So, you know, you can't just rely on one person to go fix it. We need lots of people who can tackle this problem and can work together, so that when one of us steps up into a position, we can support that person. And when another person steps into another position, we can support that person. Because we can't change the system with one person, because the system is the projection of all of us. The system is the sum total of all of our minds. Our minds are systems. They're downloads of the system that we live in. The system that we live in is downloaded into our minds in our first 7 years of life. And unless you know how to actually fix that, you're fucking around. So anybody who's promising you happiness, anyone who's promising you following your bliss, they're fucking lying to you, and they don't know what the real problem is, and they're just trying to exploit you for money because they're chasing their own version of happiness. I'm the only person that you know that's telling you the problems in this world are the way they are because no one's doing anything about it and no one cares. And let's actually do something that's best for all. Because if we can do that, then we'll be happy. And that'll be the most creative, blissful experience that you can possibly have on this earth. Because everything else is just temporary. This is something that's real. Actually making a difference in the world. Alright, so consider what I'm saying. Send me a message. Keep watching my videos. Go watch my other Facebook Lives. There's lots of context here. Alright, but we can solve the problems of inequality, but not with the same level of thinking that we're currently using. All right? Later.